What's going on out there, guys? It's me again, and we got a we got another video here down for you in the pipeline. I know I'm ready. I got my little snacks, got my monster, got my water, got all that. Um, Polly Boy is going after the New York Times. He's going after the media. He feels that because they're not towing the Slava Ukraini line, that they're somehow wrong. No. Listening to it once, really the only way to describe it is nothing more than just pure Copenhagen. Um, you'll notice as we go further along in the video that one of the points that I continue to bring up on how they're continually addicted to the Kharkiv offensive and what happened there. Just the whole measure of events, they see it completely differently, and you'll see that a lot here get brought up. Just this wanting, this yearning, this need to have another Kharkiv, and just it's almost like you can tell he's an addict for it. Like he needs it, he needs that fix, he needs that Kharkiv fix. But enough of me bitching at it. Let's hear it from himself.
Let's really talk about this New York Times article. Now, I'm not subscribed to the New York Times, but I was able to find a copy and paste of the article. It's titled, of course, Ukrainian troops trained by the West stumble in battle. And what it describes is, of course, the Ukrainian counteroffensive, right? American weapons, NATO weapons, and heralded as the first vanguard of a major assault, but quickly became bogged down in Russian minefields under constant fire from artillery and helicopter gunships. It describes one unit actually getting lost, and instead of moving through an already cleared path through a minefield, driving into another minefield. It describes another unit who delayed their offensive that was supposed to start at night, and as a result, the covering artillery fire ended up alerting the Russian forces to a pending attack. So
I know you're about to hand wave this away, all of what you just said, but a lot of that, yeah, buddy, I'm sorry. If any of that is true, like, those are just the stories that we're hearing getting out. Now, you gotta think, there's more fuck-ups like that are occurring on a day-to-day basis, and you'll hear Paul here in a sec just try to hand wave it off like, oh, well, we do it all the time. No, we do not. I'll tell you straight up right now, if the engineers failed in properly marking that lane, the engineers are at fault. If the guy running that convoy through the marked lane didn't know what he was doing and got his guys fucked up into that minefield, they fucked up. At the end of the day, it sounds like someone fucked up, and no one wants to take the blame for it because they know what lies for them down the pipeline if they do. And it's not a good thing. I'm sorry, Paul. These are basic fuck-ups. As an engineer, like, I'm sorry, you do not make, especially when you're clearing a lane through a minefield. And as a fucking leader of men yourself, you should know moving them into an area where you get lost is something you just don't do. Because guess what? Now you're in an area you don't know. Your whole unit could get jumped, dude. Which, from the sounds of things, it sounds like they did.
Describes these things as if they are emblematic of the larger offensive effort. But if you have tens of thousands of troops fighting, these sort of mistakes are pretty routine, even for U.S. forces, right? Things are delayed. Your vehicle breaks down. You can't get comms. You're waiting for the widget to show up, and the widget's delayed. Grid coordinates get messed up all the time. The point is that not.
Let me listen to that again. Just real quick, one more time. Let's back that up about 10 seconds. About 20.
sort of mistakes are pretty routine, even for U.S. forces, right? Things are delayed. Your vehicle breaks down. You can't get comms. You're waiting for the widget to show up, and the widget's delayed. Grid coordinates get messed up all the time. The point is that not that a good strategy will work despite human beings executing it, right? Flawed.
So you mentioned grid coordinates getting mixed up. I'm sorry. You call for a fire mission, you give the wrong grid coordinates, you just shelled a friendly unit. Congratulations, blue on blue. Major fuck up. You break down in the middle of Fallujah. You have no comms. There's no way to call for QRF. Your Blackwater unit gets jumped. Granted, they were also operating without the proper number of fucking people in the convoy as well because they needed administrative duties done. And yeah, it's not the U.S. military. It was the Blackwater, former Blackwater, PMC that had it happen, that had 3 of their fucking operators hung off a fucking bridge after they got fucking jumped by an angry mob. Now, I'm not going to say what they were doing in Fallujah was legit, because it wasn't. They had it coming. They did. Point of the matter is that these small fuck-ups that you're describing as small fuck-ups get real people killed. Point blank, end of fucking story, dude. And for you to just hand-wave it off as some fucking misnomer that this happens all the time, no, dude, we didn't roll outside the fucking wire if we did not have the proper comms, dude. Your vehicle's not topped off on fuel? Oh, dude, hey, you better let someone fucking know. That was the first thing we did. Anytime we went to a new fucking fob. Any fucking time. Hey, where's the fuel point? We gotta top off. Let's go. Oh, we're under indirect. It's not fucking... we're not operating? Alright, well, guess what? We're gonna park our asses outside the fucking blast radius of your fuel, and we're gonna wait until this IDF stops. Alright? Get your fucking shit together, man.
Messy, tired human beings who make mistakes. A good strategy will account for that and be flexible enough to allow that to still succeed. As we've known,
there's no strategy in the world that will save you by mixing up grid coordinates when you need to be at, we'll say, Alpha Quebec 3827260. You need to be there. Congratulations. You moved them off onto a completely different fucking map. That's what happens when you fuck up grid coordinates. Alright? And now you're fucking 8 miles off the objective and you got 30 fucking minutes to make it from where you led them to the objective. Otherwise, your whole fucking operation's fucked. Good job, guy.
Russian mistakes in especially the kind of mainstream media have really get shouted from the rooftops, and this is one of the first times we've seen.
He's not wrong about that, and he himself are one of those that does it as well. He will continually shout their mistakes from the rooftops. Hell, he'll even shout their blatant fucking lies, like the Moskva being sunk due to a smoking error or something, as opposed to being lost to combat. I get it. It's a political game that some of those guys have to fucking play. But at the end of the day, we all know the Moskva got hit by a fucking missile. Alright? As long as you come out clean with it and you fucking own up your mistakes, they can't use them against you. Point blank.
A U.S. mainstream outlet acknowledge some of the failures of Ukrainian forces and their training effort. And again, you know I'm pro-Ukraine in the sense that I want to see them kick the Russians out of their country, but that doesn't mean that they are beyond criticism. Oftentimes...
Really? They're not beyond criticism? And yet, here they are being criticized and you're fucking bitching about it, dude. Like, dude, you've been the most fucking one of the most hyperbolic Ukrainian supporters I've seen. And there are motherfuckers on Twitter that are worse than you. All right. The only reason you're so bad is because you're in the military, so you should fucking know better.
I found their command to be sort of myopic and fixated, and prefer to take tons and tons of time to prepare instead of taking advantage of the enemy's smaller windows of their weakness. But talking more about this this article, it really maintains that the 9 Western brigades would show that the American way of warfare was superior to the Russian approach. Russians had a rigidly centralized command structure, and the Americans taught Ukrainians to empower their senior enlisted soldiers and junior officers to make quick decisions on the battlefield and to deploy combined arms tactics, right, which it describes as synchronized attacks by infantry, armor, and artillery forces.
I always love it how when anyone ever talks about our tactics, that's like the go-to. Like, and it's been one of those things that's kind of, especially nowadays with what's going on in Ukraine, been very fucking prevalent. Small unit and quick decision-making capabilities are the deciding factor. And it's like, yeah, no, that is a factor. It helps. Having your guys on the ground, the commander on the front being able to make decision and not wait for the guy in the rear to make that decision for you. But at the same time, the Russians have adapted as well. I don't think they're as rigid as they were in the Soviet era. That was also an era where they kind of needed it for what they were trying to do. But no, it's just one of those funny things, because if you know how the military works, especially nowadays, no, everyone's always covering their ass, and honestly, they're waiting for orders from higher. I can promise you, Paul here might agree with the statement on the, I guess you could say, the compartmentalization of the leadership, but I can promise you, there wasn't a movement he didn't make without consulting his company commander. Especially when he was in Afghanistan. And I can tell he's that type of officer.
Right. The Western officials said this approach was more efficient, and then the costly strategy of wearing down Russian forces by attrition, threatening to deplete Ukraine's, it says ammunition stocks. I think it means all of Ukraine's armed forces. And again, if you're familiar with this, if you're a fan of this channel, you know this story is something that we've talked about for a long time, right? Ukraine can't trade one-to-one with Russian forces. It needs to get big wins, and it only can do that by breaking Russian lines, creating chaos in the backfield, forcing Russian forces to retreat. And one of the things that this article, I think, fails to...
Jeez. Now, I wonder what he could be referencing there.
Acknowledge, right? It says, Western trained brigades only got 4 to 6 weeks of combined arms training, and units made several mistakes at the start of the offensive that held them back. But
I'd like to point out here that as he reads that, he completely neglects to bring up, they're kind of like right under his cursor right now, like those two statements where they even admit that they had experts there stating that it was a tall order from the get-go, and that they're not nearly as good as they are portrayed in the media. Now, he'll get to it at the very end of the video, but I just love how he just completely ignores it in this case right here because it doesn't support what he's trying to say at all. It's just the gymnastics of this. Like, this is article hurdling at its finest, sir. You're going to be on the Olympic team for sure.
It fails to acknowledge the fact first that these were not junior units. Now, yes, they were combined into these brigades newly formed, but these were already combat-tested troops and oftentimes combat-tested units that were brought together. 4 to 6 weeks, that's how...
Combat-tested, combat-proven. who these units were literally scraped together from mobilized personnel, sent to fucking Europe specifically so they would not get infected with the Soviet way of thinking that's still ingrained in the Ukrainian military right now. Sent to fucking Europe specifically so they would not learn that. Whole new fucking officer corps stood up specifically so it would be a NATO-style offensive. And you're over here fucking lying your ass off, not knowing what the fuck's going on, trying to say that these are combat-tested units. Buddy, all the fucking combat-tested units are still in that fucking Bakhmut meat grinder, or they were killed off at this fucking point in the war. It's almost been 2 fucking years. Alright? And because of what Ukraine has done on the fucking battlefield, because of the way they've gone about this through its operation tempo, they've continually tried to defend everything and therefore are holding on to nothing. And they're continually whittling down their combat power in small bullshit assaults like you're about to describe in a few minutes, and yet you still can't fucking see what the hell is going on. You're still trying to attribute this as some kind of an American failure. It's not. It is a Ukrainian failure through and fucking through. They have the weapons, they have the equipment, they have the technology, and they haven't been able to push more than a few kilometers south in 2 fucking months. They failed. Period. Point blank. Stop making excuses.
These brigades rotate through the National Training Center. So none of this is unusual for brigade-level combined arms training. It's
the National Training Center, I went through in a month, and I was only in the sandbox for maybe 2 weeks. The other 2 weeks was in processing and out processing, getting the fucking gear in and then getting the gear out. Alright. I've seen the training videos, alright? You did nothing but fucking put them on blast as they were training these fucking guys up. If that's the fucking training that you're expecting to take on the Russians and be successful, motherfucker, no wonder they're up Shit's Creek without a paddle now.
very typical. And again, most U.S. units train don't draw on extensive combat experience, at least anymore.
That is 100% bullshit. One of my best fucking, let me put it to you this way. One of the reasons that I am still here and I have all my fucking digits and limbs is because of the combat experience of my NCOs that were deployed with me in Iraq. For some of those guys, it was their third or fourth fucking deployment. And because of the experience they gained through IF1, through fucking when we went, alright, that is valuable fucking knowledge that you cannot teach at a school. That is valuable fucking knowledge that has to be earned through years of fucking dedication to your craft, being soldiering, and just general fucking knowledge on how to fucking operate. Alright, that is shit that you cannot fucking teach. That is shit that is learned on the spot, on the job, actually going out there experiencing it. And you're fucking sitting here trying to say we don't draw off a fucking combat experience? Well, geez, buddy, if we didn't draw off a fucking combat experience, we wouldn't be calling up a bunch of fucking individual ready reserves that are already fucking out into fucking Europe right now.
And so to sit there and go, oh, this wasn't sufficient, this is, again, a NATO standard of combined arms training. You also, it's really glaringly obvious, they don't acknowledge the fact that Ukrainian troops have run a NATO offensive already. They have brigade-level combined.
Let's see if we can't get us back there.
Already. They have the...
Ah, yes. Here we go. Let's back.
It's really glaringly obvious. They don't acknowledge the fact that Ukrainian troops have...
Where have they done this? Where have they done this, Paul? Wait for it.
run a NATO offensive already. They have the Kharkiv offensive is a textbook NATO-style attack, right, where they penetrated through Russian lines, forced the Russians to retreat, disrupted their command, their control, their logistic systems, and they continually pushed the Russians back, never letting them settle into new defensive positions, right? And so we know that Ukraine can execute this playbook.
I've got one phrase for you, buddy. No plan survives contact with the enemy. So, that being said, being that you're trying to say that this is a textbook planned out attack, yeah, we can go off the assumption that they just walked in unopposed. I'm sorry, that's not a textbook attack. That's walking in unopposed. I noticed that you don't ever mention what happened in Kherson at the same time, because that was the actual fucking NATO-style offensive, which, it's funny, he's going to start getting into the Zaporozhye one here, and he lumps it all together instead of actually splitting off the fronts like he should. But, he ain't nearly the tactical or strategic mind that he portrays himself to be now, is he? But, no, why do you never mention Kherson? Like, maybe is it because you had a bunch of fucking paratroopers stuff you up until the point where they decided, we're getting bored. This dam's looking like too much of a good target for you guys to trap us on this side of the river. We're going to leave. No, you just keep mentioning Kherson and how, a bunch of thinly manned fucking posts that were skeleton crewed at best. Yeah, that's the NATO style offensive. Well, buddy, if every fucking battle plan went without opposition, we'd be winning a hell of a lot more wars.
And of course, it even quotes Zelensky acknowledging that the counteroffensive has been slow. He said, "We did have plans to start in the spring, but we didn't because we had not enough munitions and armaments and not enough properly trained brigades." Properly trained in these weapons, he said to an Aspen Security Forum. And he added, "Because we started a bit late, Russia had time to mine our lands and build several lines of defense." Again, to me, and if you've been on this channel, this is a little bit of excuse making that will.
That's all you do, Paul.
Up the map here, you can see that yes, Russia built extensive fortifications, so many so that even a properly trained NATO brigade, again, would probably have a hard time breaking through this. If you were watching this in March, you would have heard me say that Ukraine should be pushing in Bakhmut, right? The enemy there was focused for months on advancing on offense. They weren't deploying mines and digging trenches. They were advancing through the city. And so...
by the way, I forget what the counter's at. I'm still waiting on those flanks to collapse, by the way, buddy.
You're going to launch a counteroffensive. That's where you should have done it. Not in Zaporizhzhia, where, again, for months we saw no combat actions, almost no artillery fire, and literally instead the Russians spent 6 months, and it wasn't just a couple extra weeks. 6 months they were deploying mines, digging these trenches, pre-planning fires, and conducting a frontal assault against an entrenched enemy is a hard task. So, again, to me, you look at this and you say, hey, this is a fault of Ukraine's leadership. Their high-level strategic leaders looked at where the Russians were.
Let's watch that again. Watch him look up to look for any answer when he starts to blame the leadership of the Ukrainians. Just watch. It's great.
Enemy is a hard task. So again, to me, you look at this and you say, hey, this is a fault of Ukraine's leader.
Oh, there it was. Hold on. Let's back that up. To
me, you look at this and you say, hey, this is a fault of Ukraine's...
What you looking up? You looking for answers up there? Is that where your cue cards are at? What are you looking up there? Come on, buddy. You ain't gonna find nothing up there. Your answers are in front of you. They're on the map.
Leadership. They're high-level strategic leaders. Looked at where the Russians were expecting an attack, where they were strongest. And I think they allowed the idea that Western weapons and Western training would make them invincible. And
who gave them that idea, Paul? Who gave them that idea? Because I know for a fucking fact it wasn't coming from the fucking Ukrainians.
Is it doesn't. It's a good strategy if you can execute it, but it isn't impermeable. And the Russians certainly looked at Iraq and Afghanistan. They said, hey, none of these forces have really figured out a way to counter mining operations. Even a handful of anti-tank mines really disrupt NATO forces. So imagine what millions of mines can do.
That is a complete and utter lie and falsehood. We have procedures to go through minefields. We have procedures to clear these minefields. You are forgetting to follow these procedures, and you are forgetting that we also now need to adapt to the fact that they now have air deployable mines. All right, that's something that we saw at the very early going of this shit. It's where a lot of their fucking combat power. Oh, hey, Carolina, what's up? But that's a lot of their combat power. When it got hit by mines, it was coming off of their retreats. Because what the Russians did was they deployed. I forget what the actual system's called. They call it the agriculture system. Launches a fucking missile. Airdrops fucking mines, scatters them all over the place. These are smart mines, so don't go bitching about Geneva Conventions or war crimes or anything. All right? If you don't know what a smart mine is, it's a mine that self-detonates after a certain time. All right? So these are smart mines. They self-detonate, self-remove. No need to clear. And anyway, they're airdropping them behind the fucking Ukrainians. So as they're fucking going back thinking that the route's clear, they're running into a newly fucking created minefield that's been dropped behind them that they didn't even know was there. And it technically wasn't there like 30 minutes ago. But now they gotta go through that shit. And that, like, dude, just stop. I know you weren't actually, like, involved in any kind of combat arms operations. I know you went and played traffic cop in Kabul for the majority of your fucking deployment, but don't fucking sit here and try and say that it would be tough. It would be tough, yes, absolutely, but we have the technology, the know-how, and the training to get through these things. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, don't. All right, we've tried to give them the equipment, we've tried to give them the training, and they've refused to adapt any of it in any kind of meaningful or impactful way. All right. And fun fact, you're about to say exactly that by a major fuck up, by trying to loop in all the offensive as one fucking offensive.
And still, Ukrainian forces, or Ukrainians' leadership, decided that this region, with its absolutely eye-watering fortifications, was the place to go. Despite the fact that, again, there's lots of other regions, while the terrain isn't quite as favorable, that simply don't have this sort of extensive fortification network. Again, while you can say, oh, there's all these lines here, it's not clear that these are manned in any substantive way. And that if, again, Ukrainian forces could get behind Russian forces and disrupt them, they would have a hard time achieving stability. Here, again, something similar in Bakhmut, where, yes, there's a lot of these Wagner Line fortifications, but imagine if instead of this marginal progress they had in March or April smashed through Bakhmut with the brigades they had and tried to even just carve out all of this territory.
I love how he fucking describes mines as like the number one stopper of maneuver units in warfare, and he just makes the assumption that you can just thunder run yourself through fucking a major urban setting like Artemovsk or Bakhmut, whatever we're calling it today. And, we can just roll through that and be perfectly fucking fine. Dude, like, it took Wagner how long to take that city, and you think you're just gonna walk through in a fucking month? No. That's not how urban operations work, guy.
There would be tons of Russian units that would be caught behind the advance. So I say this because, again, some of this is some of the New York Times criticism, I think, is on the money. The fact that this was they acknowledge this was a tall order, but claiming that Ukrainians don't know how to go on the offense, that they don't fully understand how to use their equipment, that they didn't have unit cohesion. I'm pretty skeptical. I'm just pretty skeptical. I don't think that's the core cause. I think ultimately there was a failure of planning, and I think Ukraine's leadership missed the window, right? They wanted things to be perfect. But as you guys see, right, waiting for their 9 brigades haven't even all been deployed. They could have started this with 3 brigades and punched through Russian lines, especially after the intel leak. Because remember, when that intelligence leaked, it told the Russians they had nothing to worry about until June. Like, there was because the timelines went out into the public. And so when that happened, that should have been a cue that Ukraine needs to push their offensive work faster and harder. And so I think ultimately, again, the New York Times criticism is broadly correct, but I think sitting there and saying, "Oh, it's totally the West's fault," I think, and that Ukrainians don't know how to fight or how to launch big offensives. They do. They have successfully.
No, they haven't at all.
Question is, what was different in this counteroffensive? And again, the answer to me is Ukraine's leadership believed that the Russians could not, with no amount of time, could stop their offensive work. I think they ultimately ran this offensive like a Soviet offensive. They launched from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 axes of advance. You can't have a 9-brigade offensive and spread those brigades among 5 different points where you're pushing. It's just not mathematically or operationally feasible.
Do you really think that the operations going on in the Zaporizhia AO to the south are in any way connected to what's going on in Bakhmut? Like, you're fucking retarded. You're absolutely fucking retarded if you seem to think that those 2 offensives are in any way interlinked with one another. The only way they're interlinked with one another is that one's drawing combat power from the other. That's it. That's all. Other than that, like, they've already planned out their fucking logistical needs, their gas, all that shit. Their manpower, they're drawn from separate pools, buddy. Alright. And your whole thing of, they had the 9 brigades and they just set them in one at a time. Yeah, they're all deployed to the south. One of whom is combat ineffective right now. I think it's, they're the 42nd or whatever the fuck. Got redeployed all the way to fucking Lviv because they had 60% fucking equipment losses and manpower. Fucking, I'm sorry, you're combat ineffective at fucking, I think, 30%. I forget what the standard is, but no, dude. Just the pure amount of excuses and copium coming from him. And you can tell just in his mannerisms and how he's trying to word things and pretty it all up. Like, he knows Ukraine is definitely on the back foot. He knows things aren't going near as well as he hoped. And it's just funny to watch. It really is. Like, as the reality continues to set in for these people, that Ukraine is not the superpower powerhouse that is able to take on the Russians that they continue to think it is. They're continually clamoring for excuses, and eventually, when the rest of the Donbass is liberated from the Ukrainians and they're no longer able to abuse those people anymore, it's going to set in even further for them. And eventually, when those Abrams get there, which they're scheduled to get there by September, the Ukrainians are going to learn a very, very harsh lesson that we have continually had to learn operating those vehicles in the desert for about 20 to 30 years so far. And it's that those things, those Abrams tanks with the fucking jet engines in them that take jet fuel, yeah, those things like to drink a lot. And if you've ever seen one of their fueling points, yeah, that's going to be a dangerous, dangerous spot, because they're going to need to be deployed very, very close. And some of the munitions that we've been seeing deployed from the Russian side, getting very, very precise, to the point where they're able to strike within hundreds of meters of NATO countries in Ukraine, and still not touch NATO countries, but hit their intended targets in Ukraine. They're ready for this. They've been ready for this, and you've done nothing but continue to drive these people to their deaths, Paul. I mean, you can continue to try and cope with the Kharkiv offensive all you want. That was one fucking time. One time. This is ultimately what you're staring at right here is one of the big problems in the officer corps in the U.S. military right now. And that's their unwillingness to accept failure and mistakes on their end. And their willingness to admit them. Because anyone with half a fucking brain could see, yeah, we probably fucked up big time here. Because where are the Ukrainians getting all this manpower from? Where are they continually getting all this equipment from? They're not getting it from them. They're getting it from us. And this is about the fucking time frame here in August where all our fucking import or export stocks are to run out everywhere. And they're still clamoring to find ammo for these motherfuckers. Still. Oh, well. Consequences, Paul. Consequences. That's all I'm going to leave it on right there. So leave your comments and such in the under thingy below. I'm sorry, Paul. You're wrong. You've been wrong on this the entire time, and you're going to continue to be wrong on this. Ukraine needs to negotiate a peace. They've needed to do that for a while now, and your incessant fucking thinking on them still being able to overpower the Russians is just going to get more people killed, dude. Needlessly at that. Alrighty. I'm out.